Hi, okay, let's see. Hi, I wanted to do this little video just to kind of give you an overview of what the Purdue OWL looks like. When people have been doing their assignments, I sometimes find that there's some issues sometimes with the formatting and things, and I just wanted to make sure that you guys had a clue and give you some help as to where you should go. Now, I'm going to be the first to admit that these pop-up menus drive me absolutely crazy. So if I'm clicking out of them, I apologize, but I also don't want anything to start talking because it seems like that's what happens. So to get started, this is the Purdue OWL. So when you click on this in that resources to support your learning, this is probably where you're brought to. If not, when you scroll down, or even if you do just a Google search, down here at the bottom, you'll see the Purdue OWL. And if you remember, what we're working on is the APA style of citation. This is all about research. And you can see how these are all the different styles of research. We're only worried about APA style. Because there are so many different styles, I don't make you memorize, and most English teachers will never make you memorize one particular style. But you have to be adaptable, and you have to be able to use a guide like this in order to help you go in between styles. So that's part of the reason for guides like this. This is why we're taking you to the OWL, because it is a very reputable site. If you get into a class and you're not sure what style they use, if the instructor doesn't mention that it's APA or MLA, it's very important for you to ask, because if you do it in the wrong style, people are very specific about what styles they require, and one style is nothing like the other. So please make sure that you ask about those things. We are, for this purpose, doing APA style, so I'm just going to kind of show you what that looks like and how Purdue OWL works. So the style introduction, it's basically these three buttons repeated with a paragraph of instruction on the other side. So the style introduction is that first paragraph. If I click on overview and workshop, it's going to bring me, and I would encourage you to take a look at some of these things. It's going to talk about what it is, why we use APA, who should use APA, and you can see the disciplines listed here. And then we're going to get into the APA formatting and writing style. And I'm going to actually click on that button up here. So when I click on the formatting and style guide, I have a ton of different options, right? And so if it were me and this were the first APA research paper I was doing, and I think I actually have you work through a lot of these links, I would click on general format first. So the general format talks about what my paper should look like, and you are to this point. You're going to have a title page, which we haven't written. It will have an abstract, which you have written. You're going to write the main body today. And if you remember way back to probably week 2, we did start a references page. That was those were those first 5 that I asked you for. The references page is made up of those kind of things. We'll also talk about a page header and the running head. So these are all things that are required of an APA paper. So it talks about how to write the title page. It even gives you what one should look like. Talks about the abstract and what one should look like. Talks about citing the Purdue OWL, which you don't have to do. So that's kind of the general format. One of the big ideas in this week is the idea of in-text citations. And again, if you've not done this before or you're a little confused, in-text citations, just this basic web page, is a great place to start. So it talks about the basics. And I would read most of what's on here. I'm not going to go over everything specifically just because you guys have the ability to do that. But when I'm looking at capitalizing, quoting, and italics, using italics and underlining, this is where I want to go. APA is really weird in terms of their titles. In a references list, your whole title is not capitalized, and that's probably odd for some of us. But if we refer to the title within the paper, we need to capitalize everything. Now, I can't explain the why of that. I just know that that's the way that it is. So it's important for you to read through these things because of those little nitpicky things. Talks about when you capitalize titles. If it's hyphenated, then you capitalize both of them. First words after a dash or a colon are capitalized. It talks about when you italicize versus when you quote. So check those things out. Also in this section, you'll see a piece about short quotations versus long. Long quotations are those that are 40 words or longer. So when you're citing in text, a short quotation is less than 40, long quotation is more than 40. And so it provides you with examples of both. And it also tells you what to do with those. If you're doing a paraphrase, so you are not going to be quoting directly, this is what it should look like. Does provide you with an example of each of those. Talks about signal phrases, which is discussed in the content this week. Talks about the importance of a date, importance of a page if there is one. And again, with the date, sometimes there isn't a date. And if there isn't, in parentheses, you would use n.d. This would be considered our signal phrase. Notice this is when a quote begins a sentence and ends. In this example, you will see that this is someone else's words and they only used a portion of the quote. Okay, and it gives you all of that information. When I go down here to in-text citations, this author piece, if you have something other than just one author is very easy. When you cite in text, it's author, date, page number. If I have more than that, though, then I need to take a look at this page. If it's a work by 2 authors, it gives me an example of what it looks like in text, or if I choose to do parenthetical at the end of a sentence. 3 to 5, 6 or more. So if you have something different than just one individual author, make sure to come back and take a look at this. If my author is unknown, means I use the title. If it's an organization, that's a possibility. So even better than having the title and no author would be to have an organization be the author. And then I have some more options if I have 2 authors with the same last name, if I'm using a personal communication. If I'm citing indirectly, what this means is that if I'm using a quoted book, if I'm quoting someone else in a book, okay, so here's the author of the original book, but this is a guy that's in that book that's writing about that particular topic, this is how you would cite that. So if you're quoting an expert within a book, this is what that would look like, okay? Please make sure that you pay close attention because this is that nitpicky stuff, okay? We are not worried about footnotes and endnotes. And so, in fact, these 2 are the only 2 pieces that you would read about in-text citations. What comes next, and what's also important, is all of this references list stuff. So a reference list, they give you some basic rules, what it should look like. It has a hanging indent. Looking at what it should include, it should be in alphabetical order. If there's multiple entries by the same author, it gives you all of those options. What you're going to capitalize, what you're going to italicize. So please take note of those basic rules. It doesn't give you an example here, but I'll show you where you can find one in a second. What you see next is the reference list with the authors. So much like the in-text citations, if I have a single author, this is what I do. If I have something different, though, I need to follow some more specific rules, and so that's where this is listed. What I like about this is it gives us maybe a sentence of explanation, but then it also gives us an example. And so if you're following this as a formula, for 2 authors, you would have last name with a comma, initials, the ampersand sign, last name, comma, initials, and year. Title of the article, title of the journal, edition, page number. I'll show you where you can find another example of this in another second. So this is just about authors. Gives us an example. If I don't have an author, this is what it would look like. If I have 2 authors or 2 works by the same author, that's what it would look like. And you just kind of go down through the list trying to find whatever explains your author situation. What follows after the author are all of the different sources that you might run into. So I might have an article in a periodical, and when I click on this, I get some more options. So if it's an article in a magazine, this is what it should look like. This obviously only has one author, has the date, has the title, the author, or the magazine title, the edition, and the page numbers. So that's what I would need to include. If it's an article in a newspaper, I follow this example exactly. Now, if I'm missing information, if I don't have the page numbers, I need to delete that. I can't include it. There's a very general up at the top. This is what it would look like if you were using a very general kind of periodical formula. So whatever information you have, then you would include that. Now here, it says that there's 3 authors. And what I would do is if I only had 2, I would refer back to my reference list about authors and authors to see what I do if I only have 2 authors. You'll see books. So if I scroll down, if it's edited or if it's something kind of strange, other print sources, the one you're probably going to use frequently is electronic sources. This is if I use a web page or online content. Gives me an example, gives me a very generic one that I can follow as a formula, also gives me a paragraph. If it's an online periodical, you know, it could be from a database. Those would be an online periodical. They talk about DOIs, so if you find this DOI number, if you're using EBSCO or something like that, you can find that DOI number, and this is how you would cite that. So again, references, here's the basic rules. This is if you have authors. You all have authors, hopefully. What you do, so start here and then figure out where is my source and how do I figure that out, okay? Follow the formula. When you put it on your references list, again, they'll be in alphabetical order, and they'll have a hanging indent. You can read through these things if you want, so you can look at avoiding bias and you can look at the stylistic pieces, the basics of that. I'm not requiring headings, and we won't be doing a PowerPoint. But the other part that I want to kind of take your attention to is this APA sample paper, which can be really helpful. If you scroll down, you can download this, you can print this, but this is an actual APA paper. And when you're going through this, if you look, it gives you an abstract from a real essay. Now, it's not the same type of essay that you're writing. I believe this is a literature review, and that's not what you're looking at, but it gives you some teaching opportunities over here, some learning opportunities, and what it should look like. One thing I want to just call your attention to, this is one of the first citation in this piece, Cummings, Butler, and Kraut, 2002. Includes it as a signal phrase. So those authors suggest, there's your verb, that face-to-face interactions are more effective than email in creating feelings of closeness or intimacy, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so that's a citation they found from a source. What should happen, and I'm going to scroll really fast down to the references page, that author's name, first name was Cummings. So when I get to the references page, and this is why we alphabetize, I see that same heading down here. That's so I can cross-reference and very easily find the sources that I'm looking for. So Cummings in the body of the essay relates to Cummings in the references page. So whatever is the first word here is what you're using in the in-text citation. Whatever you find as the first word here has to be found in the in-text citation. That's very important. Okay, so take a look at this paper. It does have appendices, which you don't need, and some pictures and things, and those are not things that you need. One last thing. At the top of every piece of this Purdue OWL, you see where you can cite it automatically. This is a valid way of taking a look at making your reference page, but making it very simply. If I have a website, I just copy and paste that in here. I can change. So if I find the book or the journal article, what it allows me to do is it gives me the formula, and it does that for me. It generates that. My one suggestion, though, would be to double check that to make sure that it is correct in terms of punctuation, spelling, etc. It's very, very important. If you have any questions, please don't